transparency and accountability is key, not just in the school districts, but frankly for the rest of state government. That's one of the reasons, we did launch a couple weeks ago our recovery.delaware.gov site that Matt's heading up to make sure people really have a sense of where the stimulus money is being spent, but also about the school district money. I think, unfortunately, the school district piece, we're going to have to evolve over a period of time. I mean, I think our starting point is basically going to be to show the check registers, which is not an ideal way of doing this, and I get that. What you'd really rather have are searchable databases, but that's going to require, obviously some investment in funds. But I do think in the end, and this was a big part of when I talked about during the campaign as well, that you've got to give people the information that they need in order to measure the effectiveness of these districts, and that includes not just student performance, but it also includes financial transparency.
Real quick, what's Vince Meconi going to be doing?
But no, I'm glad you asked the question. So, and let me sort of give you the context here. I mean, so the specific answer to your question, Vince is helping with the stimulus package. And stepping back for a second, I talked to Governor Corzine about a month ago. All the governors got together.
He wouldn't take him either, huh?
all the governors got together about a month ago in Washington. We spent most of our time talking about the stimulus package. And it was, Governor Corzine said that his view of the stimulus package, it was so complicated and such a big deal, and in his view it was like the equivalent of creating a whole new cabinet department. Now, we're obviously not doing that. Matt Dent is an incredibly talented guy, and I've asked him to take on the leadership role of making sure that we get all the stimulus funding we're entitled to, and that we're spending it wisely. Well, I knew I was going to take some heat about asking Vince to take on this temporary casual seasonal role. But if I had to choose between the heat that I was going to take, I would rather take the heat for bringing him on rather than the heat for leaving money on the table. And Vince this is not a policy-making role, but Vince is somebody who understands state government inside and out. He understands numbers, he understands budgets, and he's a bulldog. And so, particularly in the meantime, when our budget office is so focused on dealing with his historic budget shortfall, I was willing to take the heat in putting Vince in this temporary casual seasonal role.
So he's going to Rahm Emanuel it then?
No, he's not. He's not. Absolutely not. Matt's really Matt Dent is really sort of Rahm Emanuel. Vince is really focused on and this is complicated. I mean, this stimulus bill, is incredibly long and complicated. In fact, Matt in his way sent me an email at 4:00 this morning. Again, having reviewed it, this is a very fast-moving train. We've already had to make submissions, for some of this money. So we are really just running as hard as we can to make sure we're staying in front of some of the deadlines and the like.
How do you feel about this nonsense with the civil unions going on in Dover?
That was actually, can I rephrase that slightly? I wanted to rephrase that as, can I suggest an important economic differentiator for Delaware? I know New Jersey and Maryland both have domestic partnerships, but there is no state in the region that offers civil unions, and that is a segment of the population that is higher income on average, has higher disposable income on average, and there's a lot of potential entrepreneurship, especially from potential spouses of state employees of the larger employers that offer domestic partnership benefits.
Look, I mean, I've made it very clear that should House Bill 5 get to my desk, I would sign it. I've been not only on record, I've sort of been out front in explaining why that is. And a lot of it, is beyond the whole moral, is it the right thing, which I think it is. The other part is I think it's the economically right thing to do. With respect to the civil union issue, I really want to understand what it means, because it means different things to different people. I don't think there ought to be any discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and if something like that, comes forward, hits my desk, I would take a look at it. And I also said publicly that had the Senate Bill 27, which would be the constitutional amendment that came up last week, I was certainly against that.
Defeated by a majority in the Senate.
Yeah.
So I think potentially the votes are there.
I do too.
And the language that would have banned civil unions was stripped in Venable's own committee. So I honestly think it's something that at this time in this session of Congress, a state legislature, that could go through.
Yep.
And one added economic point on that, the wedding industry is a big business.
Fair enough.
It's a high spending industry.
You have 3 minutes
All right,
to wrap up.
I want to actually follow up on Tom's question, because I think it's a very important one. And let me sort of lay out for you again the time frame. So came into office on January 20th, and thought we had I think a $600 million shortfall at that time, based on the December DFAC. And then March DFAC, $750 million shortfall. We've got to have a balanced budget by June 30th. So it's my job to present a proposal to the General Assembly, which I did 2 weeks ago. That being said, I mean, this is the beginning. First of all, it's the beginning of a process for this fiscal year, but it's absolutely the very first thing I did the day after I was sworn into office is I launched this this performance review, system-wide performance review of state spending. And that includes sort of the relatively easy stuff. And we've received thousands of ideas from people throughout the state. We're going through all those ideas. But it also includes some big stuff. And I think, to Tom's point, and it really feeds in, it gets really to the question I think that you asked earlier about, restoring when do you restore the pay cut? Well, the best chance that we have of restoring the pay cut is to generate the revenues we need and to make sure that we're getting rid of all the waste and the inefficiency possible. And so part of that means and this is not going to end on June 30th. I mean, this is going to be, sort of an ongoing process to figure out where can we free up money that we're spending on stuff that we just shouldn't be spending money on anymore. And we started real quickly with things like fleet and things like travel, and now the proposal on the plane, and and stuff like that. And there are a bunch of things like that. But there's going to be more, and we're going to take our time, sort of beyond June 30th. Most governors, let me just make sure you understand the process. Most governors start the budget process basically in August. All right, so they have between August and January to put together their budget. And so and typically at the end of January, governors will make their presentation to the General Assembly. Well, in our case, we have a brand new administration that had 2 months. And so, it's certainly not perfect, and it certainly doesn't take into account some of the longer term, more structural changes that we think are going to be appropriate. But I think, just if you, over a period of time, over a period of, many months, and frankly beyond, we expect to continue to be offering up ideas that will lead to increased effectiveness, increased efficiency.
Thank you.
So, appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again soon.